Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that almost never happens, a foreign power capturing the sitting president of another country. We're going to break down how it all went down, the legal firestorm it kicked off, and what it really means for all of us. So, picture this. It's January 2026. A dramatic military raid goes down, and just like that, it becomes this massive flashpoint for international debate. In this explainer, we're going to look at what happened, how it was justified, and maybe most importantly, what this means for the future of how countries deal with each other.
Okay, so how on earth did an event like this actually happen? The US gave the mission a pretty intense name, Operation Absolute Resolve, and honestly, it was the explosive finale to weeks of seriously escalating tensions.
And things escalated fast. I mean, really fast. In just a few weeks, we went from naval pressure and strikes on suspected drug boats to a full-on special forces raid right in the middle of Caracas. Before anyone could really even process it, Maduro and his wife were in US custody on a plane to New York to face federal charges.
You can imagine, the second this news broke, the entire world was asking one question: was this even legal? And the answer, well, it really depends on whose version of international law you're listening to. And here is the absolute core of the legal fight. The US is framing this thing not as an act of war, but as a police action. Their argument is that since they don't recognize Maduro as the real president, he doesn't get head of state immunity. Simple as that. But for pretty much the rest of the world, including the UN, this was a crystal clear breach of Venezuela's sovereignty, an illegal military intervention that just spits in the face of the UN Charter.
So to even try to justify putting Maduro on trial in an American court, the US had to dust off this old and frankly super controversial legal idea, the Kerr-Frisbee doctrine. What it says, basically, is that it doesn't matter how you get a defendant into the courtroom. Even if you literally kidnap them from another country, the court can still put them on trial. Yeah, as you can imagine, it's an idea that raises some huge questions about where you draw the line. But while the world's lawyers and diplomats were all debating the legality of this thing, what was actually happening on the ground in Venezuela? Well, if the goal was a smooth, clean transition of power, the short answer is that it seems to have backfired badly. So, instead of creating clarity, removing Maduro from the board created this incredibly dangerous power vacuum. You've got the Supreme Court saying the vice president is in charge now, but Maduro's loyalists, they're digging in their heels, saying he's still the real president, he's just being held captive. This just creates this deeply unstable mess with all these competing claims to power, and analysts are worried this could easily spiral into armed conflict and the country just breaking apart.
So, how did the rest of the world take this news? Well, the international reaction was fast, and for the most part, it was not good for the United States. You can practically see the world's geopolitical fault lines right here in this table. I mean, of course, countries like Cuba and China immediately condemned it, but what's really telling is that even US allies in Europe, like Germany, who are no fans of Maduro, by the way, they were quick to say, whoa, this should be solved with politics, not unilateral force. Very, very few countries actually came out in support of the US move. And this quote from the UN Secretary General really just nails the fear that was spreading everywhere. The concern wasn't just about what happened in Venezuela. It was about the precedent it sets for the future. I mean, if this is okay, what's to stop other powerful countries from doing the exact same thing? It could tear apart the whole idea of national sovereignty that the world order is built on.
Now, beyond all the political drama and legal arguments, there's this hidden cost to this kind of thing that almost always gets ignored: the devastating environmental fallout.
You have to remember, this conflict didn't just happen in a pristine country. It was dropped on top of a nation whose ecosystems were already completely collapsing. We're talking chronic oil spills that had turned places like Lake Maracaibo into toxic nightmares, and illegal mining just ripping through the Amazon rainforest. Venezuela's environment was already on the absolute brink.
And this is how a bad situation spirals into an absolute catastrophe. First, you get the direct pollution from the military action itself. Explosions, fires, fuel spills. But then, as the country slides into chaos, all environmental protection just stops. There's no one left to monitor the oil spills or stop the illegal logging. It's a chain reaction that could easily trigger a full-blown ecological disaster. So after all this, where does Venezuela go from here? Well, analysts basically see the country at a terrifying crossroads, with three potential and totally different paths forward. Okay, scenario one. This is the best case, but let's be real, it's a long shot. It's a peaceful, negotiated path to a new government. This would mean all the different factions would have to somehow come to the table and agree on new elections.
But with the country so divided and with so much anti-US feeling, that path is, well, it's a really tough one.
Then you have scenario 2, and this one is a lot darker. In this future, the pro-Maduro groups don't just give up, they start a guerrilla war, leading to a long, drawn-out internal conflict that could literally fracture the country and make the terrible humanitarian crisis even worse.
And finally, scenario 3, which might just be the most dangerous of all. This is where the conflict doesn't stay inside Venezuela's borders. With countries like China and Russia having backed Maduro in the past, Venezuela could become the next proxy battleground for global superpowers, destabilizing not just the country, but the entire Western Hemisphere.
So at the end of the day, the capture of Nicolás Maduro forces all of us to face a fundamental and really uncomfortable question. Does the goal of removing a leader ever justify violating another nation's sovereignty? There are no easy answers here, and you can be sure the entire world will be watching to see which one of these three futures becomes Venezuela's reality.